Our Gadigal clan is one of the 29 clans which make up the Eora Nation. It's a nation that's bound by 3 distinct landmarks. So I've got the Hawkes River up to the north, the Nepean River out to the west, and the Georges River down to the south. Within the boundary of those mighty rivers lie our Eora Nation and the land of our Gadigal people, one of the many clans of that nation. To our guests, if you've travelled from across the seas, from across our great country, great states of this magnificently beautiful city with this harbour that our mob call Warang just down the road there, welcome. Look, I'd love to stay around and listen to songlines today because how amazing would it be to be listening to songs in language, eh? But I've got to run off to another event straight after this. But on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council and its members, our Gadigal mob, please, for those of you who are travelling this afternoon, travel safely. And once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Craig, for making us feel welcome on this land, particularly as we are right in that spot of over there, Warang. This is the spot where young people were initiated into dog and kangaroo dance, and we follow that tradition of understanding who we are and how we live through our music and what we do. So tonight, it is astonishingly marvellous that tonight we're going to be singing in language. I just can't say what the name of the language is. I'm so frightened that I'm going to get it wrong. Gudjal Language. Maybe I got it right. So my thanks to William Santo, who's been here for several days now, working with PARADISEC, which can be found in the turret, and also with a splendid group of our students who are going to try and work out how to help make this language live long and to be understood and promoted through the next generations of young people. So I'm terribly proud of everybody tonight, students, faculty, PARADISEC team, visitors that come in, parents who really looked after young people to be able to do these kinds of things. It's a wonderful place to be here at the Conservatorium so that we can explore our heritages. And it was so great talking to Uncle Craig, because we actually discovered that we have great-great-great-grandfathers who came to Australia, because he also has non-Australian background heritage, on the same ship. Go figure. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Anna. I'd now like to introduce Uncle William Santo and Uncle Harry Alley. They are Gudjal elders. Gudjal is the language spoken of Charters Towers. And William lives in Alice Springs and Harry lives in Sydney. And they're going to be talking to you more about the podcast that we're celebrating today, which features Gudjal, and the work they've been doing this week, and tell you more about Gudjal language, people and country. Thank you, Uncle
Harry. A very good evening to everybody. It is indeed an honour to stand here before you, but I too, as a Gudjal descendant, like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and particularly to thank them for the traditions and culture which has been handed down. It is a very proud moment to stand alongside a cuz, and particularly from the early days, for him being the younger generation, we used to always relate to him as Willie, and even in my old age, it's still Willie, despite him being William to the rest of our Eora community. But that's life and history, and particularly my ear's not getting bigger, but I must thank him sincerely for getting me to be there with him. But he's been at the forefront, particularly from our time and my memory of growing up in Charters Towers, which is Gudjal country. There was, because of culture and particularly of policy, we weren't allowed to exchange and talk language and share things because we were worried about being put under the Aboriginal Protection Act. I spent a lot of my younger time being in cupboards, particularly one of the good things of having good hearing, I could always we could hear the police truck coming down the road, and thank goodness for crashed gearbox, we were able to be put in cupboard, or later on when we were too big for the cupboard, we were told to run down into the bush. So we were never, in a period of time, I can remember that no Aboriginal people were allowed into town. You had to leave the town at sunset. And all these policies, and particularly if families weren't adhering to what was part of what was seen as the norm, we were sent off to Palm Island and sort of separated from family. So those things of sort of passing on language and cultural aspects was lost in that particular situation. I have sort of looked for a better life, and I was very fortunate through my uncles on the alley side, which is not the Santo side of which William and I are related. My mother and his father are brother and sister, and traditions go back, and the traceability of who we are from that side. But to make a better life for myself and to see the biggest, brightest sky, I joined the military. I joined the Royal Australian Air Force. I served 23 years, and that's how I come to be here in the big bright lights of Sydney, as I've shifted all around Australia and the world. But particularly what we've found, and particularly as I go back to country, and to see the great work that William has done to trace and to bring forward into our current generation the language of what was lost is really endearing. The only trouble with language, and particularly with the pronunciation of G's, K's and things being said the same, when I look at the spelling to try and sort of pronounce it, it's not in the right context, and it's not coming from the inner chest and all those sort of things. But again, this is just the start, and particularly William has passed it on to the generation that's following, and we look to you and the work that you're doing. But again, it's going back to community, and particularly the help that the university has given them to sort of keep it moving it forward. And there's other renditions about making language exciting, and people want to learn it or want to understand it about more. I know, particularly from an Australian perspective, and certainly funding from New South Wales, where there's funding being presented to revive language and things like that. But again, as we get older and the mirror gets cracked as I look in it more each day, we have to look to the younger generation and people like yourselves. So, but again, I'm always sort of on call if I can assist and to help. And particularly, I'm very proud of Cuz here, and particularly we'll look as we go into the next year to be there with him and stand by him as he goes forward. Thank you, William, and thank you once again from me, from the deepness of my heart.
Yeah, that was my big cuz talking, and so a lot of the, I remember when I started this journey, like I said, I wasn't expecting anything, so all this stuff happened over time, so many years, so 35 years or so I've been working on language, not only my dad's side, I've been working on my mum's side up in the Northern Territory, and so I've been doing this for many years. So, and a lot of that stuff on my mum's side, around 40 years. So, one thing with gathering all the material, this didn't happen straight away. There was a lot of other stuff I was doing in my life, and I was travelling down to Adelaide. I was studying down that way, and then run into Peter Sutton. He's one of the linguists that went up our way and recorded Kookabarden, our neighbour right next to us. So all this happened over time, and I didn't know where it was going to take me. So what happened over the years, this all started coming together in the later years when I started meeting Miff and then Alex Anderson, because Alex wanted to do his master's with Gudjal Language, and fortunate Miff picked him out of 1,000 students. I don't know how she picked him, but it sort of worked out anyway, Miff. But meeting Miff was a funny thing too, because I was only living in Alice, and I was a culture advisor for one of the organisations in Alice Springs, and this lady said, "Oh yeah, I know a linguist." And fortunately, she was in Alice at the time, so I think it was fate. Everything sort of came together, and then we talked for a little while about what I wanted to do with Gudjal language. So you remember, Gudjal language was lost through. I think it was there, but we still haven't gathered a lot of the. Like, we had singular words, but we didn't have a grammar. So this is where Alex and Miff, and 2 years or 18 months of Zoom, we compiled this grammar guide. And, and then everything happened after that, because, I'm very proud of young Alex, because he stuck by, and same as Miff, because I was getting a bit distracted in other, work, and just couldn't have time to do things. But we worked it out. We, made time, and I'm so proud to where we got today, because now we're starting to perform live in Gudjal, especially grammar hasn't been spoken for 30 years. In the 70s, a lot of the old people could sing and speak grammar through Gudjal language. So we really progressed to where we are now, but we still got a long way to go before we have Gudjal speakers. So hopefully range is going to happen down the track in our country, and I really want to start getting these young people more involved, because they're our speakers. And then we want to bring back our language back in charter styles, because language is power. I mean by power, everyone feel proud of themselves that they can speak their traditional language. And the old people, I feel, that was missing, because our people were going in different direction. And when I say different directions, so much drugs, alcohol, and the respect. And because when we was growing up in the 70s, early 80s, the elders in the 60s, the elders were there. The elders were there, and we could go to their place and we feel comfortable around them. But today, young people today don't respect the elders. And this is something that I'm trying to bring back. If I open a door, I'm hoping they'll follow. That's my ultimate goal before I'm put underground. So, but I thank everyone here today. It's a pleasure, and a lot of these young musicians, the Yamalbara mob band, that's the name, it means rainbow. So we've got different nationality, different colours, and everyone's happy. And we'll see how we go today and perform these songs. And I hope you all like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Harry, Uncle William. Now you're going to hear from the PARADISEC staff, Jodie Kell and Stephen Gudjal, who have interviewed William and various people and have created the podcast that we're celebrating today, which is part of the Toksave series. And as they make their way up, I just would like to take the opportunity to thank DVCISS, who have provided funding for these projects, and also the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, who have also assisted and supported this work on the Gudjal language and the podcast and the songwriting.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Gudjal. My cultural heritage is I'm an indigenous of Papua New Guinea, of the Gunantuna Tolai tribe. So I'm so thankful, and I, as indigenous communities of the world, I stand by in thanking Uncle Greg for the warm welcome from Gudjal Land, and also acknowledge the two brothers out there of Gudjal tribe, William and Harold. Thank you. I'll just give you a bit of a background on why we're here today and how we got involved as PARADISEC, of the great work that William has been doing. It's very inspiring, and we're wishing you the very best in engaging the generations of tomorrow to revive and uncover the Gudjal language and culture. And you've done great work, and I'm proud and happy to be part of this journey by doing a little bit of contribution towards the podcast. Just a bit about PARADISEC for some of you who might not are familiar with us. We are a digital archive, and we document, archive many small cultures of the world, but mostly with the Pacific, we are close to the archives in terms of a lot of collections and archival materials that researchers and academics over the years been collecting. So we add value to that as cultured people, and we pay a contribution in that. So PARADISEC, the archive works to international standards, and we try our best with researchers and technologists to ensure that archive continues on for many generations to come. So our Sydney lab is here in the Conservatorium, and we do a lot of preservation of legacy recordings. That's basically cassettes, reel-to-reel tapes, and we basically digitize so that we can preserve, maintain, and continue the journey of culture revitalization and continuity, or sending it back to the communities. And podcast is one of them, to have that loop from archives to academia to communities, to continue that journey. And it's a wonderful thing to be part of. So PARADISEC has got 15,700 hours of audio recordings. We've got 2,600 hours of video recordings, and we've got 1,370 languages in the archive, and just over 200 terabytes of data. So it's both technological and cultural sort of combinations that we work on. So our podcast and the primary aim is to preserve. Otherwise, it would be lost if we don't do justice to these cultures and languages around the world. Our Toksave Culture Talks podcast, I'll let Jodie talk about that, but it was launched in 2019, and it was part of the United Nations Year of Indigenous Languages. So we just felt it was appropriate to connect and engage and then move on in the journey. So the launch of this podcast, I'll let Jodie talk about, and this is the 12th episode, and in our part series of the podcast of PARADISEC. So I'll hand over to Jodie. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Yarl, everybody. So the episode number 12, which we're launching today, explores William's journey to uncover Gudjal language materials and get them out in the open and share them with his community and future generations. William's song, Buried in the Sand, which Miff and William shared with me, became a theme for the podcast because Stephen and I just had this strong sense that Gudjal language was not lost and the culture was not lost. It had been buried due to government policies and racist attitudes, and it was just waiting to be uncovered by someone like William and his community and his supporters. Projects like the Gudjal Language Project demonstrate how we can turn archival processes upside down by using archival materials to create a range of outputs. So William's written books, history books, a dictionary. You've got the language learning podcast that he created with Alex. Now there's songs, language learning materials. I think it's really important because at the lead of this project and the main motivator is William, a Gudjal man. And his family are here, so Keesha and Shakira are here and Harry, and he has support from his family. William grew up with the old people who were speaking language, so he has knowledge of these people who passed away. And in the podcast, you'll hear him actually talk about some of the people like Harry Bunn. I can remember him, sitting on the bed there in the kitchen. And it's really moving to think this is a language that's coming back. And he still has memories from his childhood of these people. He also, and this is something Peter Sutton talked about, William has had a long-term persistence. This is a project that's gone on for so long, and in the podcast you'll hear him talk about the beginnings of it, way back when he was a young man and how it all started. And it's just fascinating to think of where it's come to and then think where it's going to go. So we interviewed William, Miff and I interviewed William in Alice Springs. And then we also interviewed Peter Sutton, the linguist that William's talking about, and he was in recording in Queensland in the 1970s on amazing old Nagra reel-to-reel recorders, and he shared some photos. If you look on the website, you'll see this photo of him out in the field. He worked with elders such as Freddie Tumba, Ranji Pope, Harry Bunn, and they recorded language and songs. And then when you listen to these recordings, they are so very, very valuable. And we also included in the podcast excerpts from the language learning podcast that William made with Alex, who's here. And so there you actually get this sense that you've got someone like Freddie Tumba or Harry Bunn working with William, a descendant, working with a young student, Alex, supported by Miff, and suddenly you have this across generations, across cultures, working together to create something for language learning. The other thing that I think is really important, and you'll hear in the podcast, is talking about the attitudes at the time, the government policy. Peter Sutton, it was fascinating when we had the conversation with him where he documented as a white researcher going into these areas. His number plate was collected by the police. He had to have guides with him at all times. He was considered a troublemaker because he was engaging with Aboriginal people. He did go on to work on 87 land claims because he could see this injustice that was happening. William also talks of injustices and, when land rights came in and what went on. And I think these people have a lot of courage and bravery and strength to have continued fighting for culture and continued fighting for language. And that's very apparent in the podcast. We're going to play a few excerpts, just little grabs. I don't want to play too much because I want you to all go and listen to it. You can find Toksave Culture Talks on most streaming platforms, or you can jump on the PARADISEC website and listen to it there, or also on the Sydney Con website. I'll just say the first excerpt, I think, speaks for itself. It outlines William's connection to the old people, and it kind of talks about what it's like to hear recordings, and you'll also hear Freddie Tumba singing and the Magpie song. And it's beautiful because we're going to hear more music after this. The next excerpt, and I've cut it up into a little bit, you'll actually hear William talking a little bit about listening to language, and you'll hear Freddie Tumba sharing the word muguna, brother, and you'll hear more of that word later. And then the final excerpt will play a little bit of the language learning podcast and the origin of the word yarrel that we've been using today and how it's come back into use. William's words at the end, I think, will really ring true when you see the students get up here with him, and it's been amazing to watch it this week, and all these young people come together and support William and Keesha and Shakira to sing songs in Gudjal language. So we'll now play a little bit of the podcast. Thank you.
Do you remember the first time you heard them?
I was sitting there, most times I was sitting on my own, just listening to the tapes, But it was a funny feeling, just the way it was pronounced. Yeah, listening to it on tape, it just, I don't know, it's just a, when you're by yourself and there's no one around, you just get so excited in your moment, and I, sometimes I get feelings. Someone's pushing me to bring this stuff out. That's what I feel.
That's a Little Magpie.
That was Little Magpie, sung by Gudjal elder Freddie Tumba, recorded on Palm Island in 1970 by Peter Sutton. We now talk to Peter about his memories of Freddie Tumba and working with Gudjal elders in Queensland in the 1970s.
What was Freddie Tumba like when you met him?
He would have been about 65, 70. He was tubby. He was energetic. I think he was rather isolated. He was quite jovial, he was having fun. He was being respected for something that he could do, and probably in that place nobody else could do. The first songs they're clearly songs that have been learned through endlessly repeated exposure to ceremonies and gatherings.
For me, growing up, I was always around old people listening to language.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't understand what they was talking about, it was all, they were talking all the time. I spent a lot of early years out in the stations, like Lincoln Spring, and then Wandavale. We had a lot of the old ringers, stockmen, but they were from, in our history, oral history was so important to hand down.
Yeah.
To people, especially us young ones who want to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was lucky. I was the one that listened.
Mugina brother. That's your older brother or youngest? Mugina, oldest or oldest? Youngest or oldest? Mugina.
We've been listening to the recordings, and of course in European culture and Australian culture, Aboriginal culture were very different. So we don't have a lot of one-to-one matches between words like hello and how are you in Gudjal. But we've been listening to the recordings and we've found some words which come quite close. So the first one is yarrel, and I'll just play the recording for you because Freddie Tumba actually provides a little explanation of what it means.
Yeah, you come to a camp to see that fella, you sing out. Hello. Yarrow means, I'm here. Yarrow. Yeah, yarrow.
But we were talking and we think that sounds a lot like what you say in English. When you go up to a group of people that you haven't seen in a while or you don't know maybe, you say hello. And so we thought a good alternative in Gudjal would be Yarrel for hello. So Yarrel. Yarrel, William?
Yarrel.
So then having these recordings has helped you to learn.
It's helping me to learn. Long time coming, because from what we're doing here with Alex and Miff, I love to bring a song out just with Gudjal language.
So on that note, let's hear a song in Gudjal language. I'm going to invite Keesha Gordon and Keesha Kelly and Delia to come up while we set up. You're going to hear 4 songs tonight. We will build up the tempo as we go along. So it's possibly a time to grab another drink or something else to eat while we get the levels just as we set up. And I'll invite Keesha Gordon to say something about this first song, Gundaloo.
So this first song is called Gundaloo. It's a lullaby I created with my daughter and my dad. It's basically for my grandson. So yeah, so I hope it's Gundaloo means emu. So yeah, so you'll see.
Gundaloo gaben goiba Gundaloo layanina Gundaloo gaya yenji pirana Magabalakia yambayanjana Gundaloo gaben goiba Yamalbara and you turn your man around. Yan yan alio. Oh, Gudjal. Oh, Gudjal. Oh, Gudjal. Yan yan alio. Put your mandala in, you put your mandala out, you put your mandala in, and you bilbo all about. Do the Gudjal and you turn your barn around. Yani yana leo. Oh, Gudjal. Oh, Gudjal. Oh, Gudjal. Yani yana leo. Put your mogara in, you put your mogara out, you put your mogara in, and you bilbo all about. Do the Gudjal and you turn your barn around. Yani yana leo. Oh, Gudjal. Oh, Gudjal. Oh, Gudjal. Yani yana leo. Put your bambawara in, you put your bambawara out, you put your bambawara in, and you feel the all about. The Gudjal and you turn your barn around. Yani yana leo. Oh, Gudjal. Oh, Gudjal. Oh, Gudjal. God